$300. I stared at the HOA fine in disbelief, my blood absolutely boiling. They were fining me for building a road on my own land. A 300-feet access road I designed myself as a civil engineer, fully permitted by the county. Then Constance Hartwell, the power-hungry HOA president, showed up on my porch, smirking, demanding I pay up immediately. "Mr. Webb, you will comply with community standards," she sneered, waving the fine like a weapon. "Pay now or we'll lien your property." "Really?" I replied, stepping closer. "And how do you plan to access your neighborhood when I block the easement?" Her smug expression faltered. "What easement?" "The one and only road giving your entire 47-home subdivision legal access to the highway. The one running through my corner property." She thought she was shaking me down for $300. She actually just handed me the power to make her whole neighborhood worthless overnight. Comment your state if you've ever dealt with a crazy HOA. Let me tell you how a $300 HOA fine turned into the biggest mistake of one woman's political career. 6 months ago, I was Marcus Webb, freshly divorced civil engineer, sitting in an empty apartment, staring at papers that cut my life in half. 25 years designing municipal infrastructure for ungrateful bureaucrats who couldn't tell a storm drain from a donut hole. At 52, I was done being pushed around. That's when I found the 2-3-acre corner lot in Willowbrook. The moment I saw those property lines on the survey map, something clicked. This wasn't just land. This was leverage. The lot sat at the perfect intersection, controlling access between the county road and the entire subdivision. Previous owner was an old farmer who'd held onto it for decades, probably laughing at all the city folk who built around him. Smart man. I bought it cash. Best impulse purchase of my life. The farmhouse needed everything, but I had time and tools. Morning coffee mixed with the smell of fresh sawdust became my new routine. The satisfying weight of my hammer driving nails into solid wood. Rebuilding something that would last. For 3 peaceful months, I thought I'd found paradise. Then I met Constance Hartwell. Picture the most power-hungry HOA president you can imagine. Then add bleach blonde hair, nails sharp enough to cut glass, and a voice that could shatter windows. This woman drove a white BMW SUV covered in bumper stickers. Community standards matter. Respect authority. And I kid you not, Willowbrook pride. The sound of her designer heels clicking on pavement announced her presence like a warning siren. Our first meeting, she cited me for a mailbox that was 2 and below regulation height. A mailbox that had been there since Reagan was president. The citation was printed on HOA letterheads, so official looking you'd think she was the IRS. But that was just her opening move. Over the next month, Constance went on a citation rampage that would make a traffic cop jealous. Mrs. Rodriguez got hit for bird feeders attracting undesirable wildlife. Apparently, cardinals don't meet Willowbrook's aesthetic standards. The Hendricks family faced fines for grass that was A/4 and too tall. Some college kid got violated for parking his Honda in his own driveway because it was inconsistent with neighborhood character. The woman had turned the HOA into her personal kingdom, ruling through fear, fines, and enough paperwork to choke a bureaucrat. Board meetings were basically her royal court where terrified homeowners came to beg forgiveness for crimes against suburban perfection. Most people paid up and kept quiet. Easier than fighting City Hall, right? I should have seen trouble coming when I started planning my driveway project. The farmhouse sat 300 foot back from the county road, connected by a dirt track that turned into a swamp every time someone watered their lawn. As an engineer who'd spent decades building proper infrastructure, that muddy mess offended me professionally. So, I did everything right. County permits, professional surveyor, engineered drainage, a proper 300 feet paved access road, entirely within my property lines, built to last 50 years. The day I laid the first section of asphalt, breathing in that satisfying smell of hot tar, hearing the smooth hum of the roller compacting everything perfectly, I felt like I was finally building something permanent. That's when Constance struck. She appeared at my door the next morning like some suburban Grim Reaper, waving a citation that made my blood pressure spike 20 points. $300 for unauthorized road construction affecting neighborhood aesthetics. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. What this power-drunk dictator didn't realize, she'd just picked a fight with the one guy in Willowbrook who knew exactly how to make her regret it. Constance didn't waste any time showing her true colors. 3 days after that first citation, I found a certified letter jammed between my screen door and frame like a ransom note. The return address made my morning coffee taste like battery acid. Willowbrook HOA urgent legal notice. Inside was a masterpiece of bureaucratic intimidation that would make a loan shark jealous. Not only was I still on the hook for the original $300 fine, but now they'd added $150 in administrative processing fees and another $75 for certified delivery costs. Simple math. Pay $5 and $25 within 30 days, or they'd slap a lien on my property faster than you could say foreclosure. The letter even included a helpful paragraph about how liens could destroy my credit score, tank my refinancing options, and this was rich, damage my standing in the community. The sheer audacity made the paper feel greasy in my hands. That afternoon, Constance arrived for round 2, bringing back up some nervous pencil pusher in a discount suit who called himself the HOA's compliance officer. Apparently, that's fancy talk for guy who holds Karen's clipboard while she destroys people's lives. Mr. Webb, Constance announced, her designer heels clicking on my concrete like a death march. I hope you've reconsidered. We're reasonable people, but rules are rules. I stood there watching this woman threaten me on my property for improving my land with my money, and something inside me snapped into focus. You know that crystalline moment when you realize you're not dealing with reasonable people? That's when engineering mode kicks in. I'd like to review the HOA covenant documents, I said calmly. The compliance officer blinked like I'd asked for his firstborn. I'm sorry. The legal documents that give you authority over my property. I want copies. Constance's smile froze solid. Mr. Webb, surely we don't need to involve lawyers. Who mentioned lawyers? I just want to understand what authority you're claiming here. That weekend, I spent my Saturday morning at the county records office, a building that smells like old paper, burnt coffee, and broken dreams. You'd be amazed what municipal filing cabinets can teach you when you know how to read them. 25 years of dealing with city bureaucrats had taught me that the devil's always in the details, buried 3 folders deep, where lazy people never bother looking. And boy, did I find details. Turns out the Willowbrook subdivision was platted back in 1987, when some developer thought my corner lot would make a perfect gas station. They marked it as future commercial development, which meant, and here's where that legal education I picked up designing municipal projects came in handy. My property was never technically subject to HOA authority. Some attorney back in the Reagan administration screwed up the paperwork, and nobody had caught it for 35 years. The sound of justice was quieter than I expected. Just papers rustling in a musty file drawer. But wait, it gets better. Buried deeper in those 1987 documents was something called an ingress-egress easement agreement. Basically, a legal contract giving the subdivision access to the county road through a 50-foot strip along my property. Standard procedure except for one beautiful detail that made my engineering heart sing. The agreement required the HOA to pay the property owner an annual maintenance fee, $500 per year starting in 1987. I ran those numbers 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. 36 years of unpaid fees plus compound interest at the state-mandated 6% annually. The texture of those old documents felt like gold leaf under my fingertips as I calculated the total, $7,500 in unpaid fees. While Constance was threatening to lien my property over $525, she was sitting on a debt 15 times that amount. The irony was so perfect it hurt. Monday morning, I called the HOA office where some secretary who sounded like she'd rather be getting a root canal answered after 4 rings. "Tell Miss Hartwell that Marcus Webb called about the $7,500 in unpaid easement fees," I said sweetly. "She'll know what I'm talking about." Constance called back in exactly 18 minutes. Her voice had that particular strain you hear when someone's world starts cracking. "Mr. Webb, I don't know what kind of game." "No game, Constance, just property law." "You wanted documents?" "I found some interesting ones." That evening, my neighbor Elena Rodriguez came over with homemade tamales and a story that made everything click into place. The smell of corn, masa, and perfectly spiced meat filled my kitchen while she told me about 3 years of Constance's systematic harassment. Bogus fines for garden decorations, mailbox colors, even the number of cars in her driveway during family gatherings. "She targets people who can't fight back," Elena said, watching her kids play safely in my fenced yard. "Single moms, immigrants, anyone who doesn't look like her vision of suburbia." That's when I made the decision that would change everything. The next morning, I sent Constance a certified letter of my own, 1 page, professionally formatted, with 30 days to pay those easement fees or face legal action. Her response came faster than an allergic reaction. Constance's retaliation came swift and vicious, like a rattlesnake with a law degree. Within 48 hours of my easement fee demand, she'd filed a formal complaint with the county zoning board, claiming my driveway violated setback requirements. The smell of desperation was thick as truck exhaust. Never mind that I had permits, inspections, and approvals from 3 different county officials. But that was just her opening move. The real sucker punch came when my phone started ringing with confused clients. Apparently, Constance had been making her own calls, casually suggesting to anyone who'd listened that I was unreliable and the type of contractor who sues people over coffee temperature. Marcus Tom Bradley from the county supervisor's office sounded genuinely puzzled. "Got a weird call about you today. Some HOA lady claiming you're difficult to work with." "What's she smoking?" That bitter taste in my mouth. That was my reputation being poisoned by someone who'd never hired me to build so much as a birdhouse. Next came the neighborhood petition. 17 signatures on fancy letterhead demanding I bring my property into compliance with community standards. She'd gone door to door like some suburban missionary collecting names from people who'd never even seen my driveway but were terrified of ending up on her hit list. I found it taped to my front door Tuesday morning. The paper soggy with dew, and that particular stickiness that makes everything feel contaminated. The texture felt slimy between my fingers, like handling something diseased. But here's what Constance didn't realize. Every escalation from her side gave me more ammunition for my counterattack. I hired the best surveyor in the county, old school guy named Pete, who'd been mapping property lines since before satellites existed. Cost me $2,200. But when you're building a legal case, precision is everything. Pete's equipment could pinpoint property boundaries to within 2 inches. And what we discovered was absolutely beautiful. The HOA had been illegally dumping on my property for years. Those neat piles of brush, grass clippings, and construction debris that appeared after every community cleanup, all sitting 15 foot inside my property line. We're talking about systematic trespassing that in civil court could cost them about $500 per incident under state property law. I'd learned this trick during my municipal days. Most people don't realize that unauthorized dumping on private property carries automatic daily fines that compound faster than credit card debt. One pile of yard waste becomes a $15,000 lawsuit if you document it properly. The sound of Pete's surveying equipment beeping as it confirmed coordinates was like listening to a cash register ring up justice. But the real masterpiece came when I installed trail cameras, professional-grade hunting cams with night vision, motion sensors, and GPS timestamps. Within 1 week, I had dozens of crystal-clear photos showing Constance's compliance officer cutting across my land to access the subdivision's back entrance, saving himself maybe 60 seconds of driving around the block. Each photograph was potential evidence in a trespassing lawsuit. Date stamps, facial recognition quality, GPS coordinates embedded in the metadata. Any halfway decent attorney could turn those images into a settlement check with more zeros than Constance's IQ. Meanwhile, she was making increasingly desperate moves at county zoning meetings, showing up with her petition brigade like some kind of suburban militia. The cheap perfume cloud announced their arrival 3 minutes before they walked through the door. What Constance didn't know, I'd been attending those same meetings for 25 years as a municipal engineer. The board chairman had approved dozens of my projects over the years. When she stood up at the podium, waving that petition like it was the Declaration of Independence, demanding immediate action against illegal construction, board chairman Rodriguez actually smiled. "Ma'am, we have Mr. Webb's permits on file. Everything was approved and inspected to code. Are you citing a specific violation or just expressing general displeasure?" Watching Constance's face cycle through red, purple, and back to red again was worth missing dinner for. But then she crossed the line that changed everything. Elena called me that evening, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "Marcus, she came to my house today, started asking questions about my documentation status and whether I had proper permits for my kids to attend school here. The audacity hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Going after me was one thing. I could handle Constance's petty tyranny. But targeting Elena, a hardworking single mom whose only crime was supporting me because of her accent and last name, that wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. That was discrimination, harassment, and about 15 different civil rights violations wrapped up in suburban respectability politics. I spent that night in my workshop, surrounded by the comforting smell of WD-40 and metal shavings, planning my nuclear option. Every tool in that garage was precisely organized, perfectly maintained, ready for the right job. The next morning, I found my mailbox destroyed, crowbar marks gouged deep in the metal, post bent like a broken bone. Game over, Constance. Time to show you what happens when you pick a fight with someone who actually knows how to win one. Constance's desperation was showing, and it smelled like burnt coffee mixed with pure panic. Her latest brilliant strategy, trying to get the city council to emergency res 1 my property as pending industrial review, which in bureaucrat speak means, "We'll tie you up in red tape until you surrender." She actually submitted a 12-page petition claiming my heavy construction activities posed a threat to residential safety standards. Heavy construction activities. I'd paved a driveway. But her real masterpiece was the traffic warfare campaign. Every morning during rush hour, Constance would park HOA vehicles across the easement entrance for safety inspections. Picture a white pickup with official HOA business magnets blocking 47 families from getting to work while she stood there with a clipboard pretending to measure things. The sound of car horns blaring and engines revving as neighbors tried to navigate her manufactured traffic jam was like a symphony of suburban rage. Pure psychological warfare designed to make everyone blame me for their inconvenience instead of her for creating it. Diabolical in a pathetic kind of way. While Constance played traffic dictator, I was doing what engineers do best, gathering data. Freedom of Information Act requests are beautiful tools when you know how to use them. Most people don't realize that HOA financial records are technically public documents if you ask the right way. What I found made my blood pressure spike like a faulty pressure gauge. The HOA was $23,000 behind on road maintenance, roads that were legally their responsibility to keep up to municipal code. They owed another $8,000 to the landscaping company and hadn't paid insurance premiums in 4 months. But the real smoking gun was hiding in the administrative expenses line. $4,008 rate of Constance's divorce attorney. She was literally stealing from her neighbors to pay lawyers to hide her assets from her own husband. The texture of those financial documents felt greasy under my fingers, like handling evidence of a crime, which technically I was. That evening, Bill Hendricks appeared at my door like some kind of guardian angel with a briefcase. Bill was the former HOA treasurer, a retired accountant who'd quit in protest over Constance's creative bookkeeping, but had been too polite to make waves publicly. Not anymore. The smell of Old Spice and nervous determination filled my living room as Bill spread damning evidence across my coffee table. Original meeting minutes, unaltered financial statements, even recorded phone conversations where Constance admitted to temporarily borrowing HOA funds for personal emergencies. She threatened to sue me for defamation if I went public, Bill said, his hand steady despite the magnitude of what he was revealing. But watching her destroy Elena's family over a property dispute that crossed the line. This was intelligence gold wrapped in moral outrage. Exactly what I needed. Armed with Bill's evidence, I launched my psychological campaign. First, I installed a professional security system with motion-activated cameras covering every inch of the easement. Then I posted discreet signs. Private property, easement use monitored, all vehicles documented. The effect was immediate and beautiful. Residents who'd thoughtlessly driven through for years suddenly became hyper-aware they were crossing private land. You could see them slowing down, looking around nervously, realizing their daily access to the outside world depended entirely on my goodwill. The weight of that realization was heavier than concrete and just as permanent. Constance's response was predictably desperate. She organized community awareness drives encouraging residents to use the easement as much as possible to assert our collective rights. She even hired unnecessary landscaping crews to make extra trips, thinking she was proving some kind of point. What she was actually doing was documenting her own criminal trespassing. Every additional vehicle was another line item in the federal lawsuit I was methodically building. In property law, each unauthorized use carries compound daily penalties that stack like Legos. And I was photographing every single brick. Meanwhile, the harassment of Elena escalated to criminal levels. Anonymous notes appeared on her windshield questioning her right to live here. Someone called Child Protective Services with false reports about her kids being neglected and dangerous. The investigation was dismissed immediately, but the message was crystal clear. Cross Queen Constance, and she'll try to destroy your family. That's when this stopped being about property rights and became about stopping a sociopath with municipal authority. The neighborhood was splitting apart like fractured concrete. 23 families had joined Elena's reform movement, but Constance's loyalists were getting increasingly vicious. The sound of angry voices echoed across backyards during evening gatherings. Decades-old friendships ending over HOA politics. Property values were tanking as word spread about Willowbrook's access crisis. Real estate agents started steering clients toward other subdivisions, whispering about legal complications and neighborhood instability. My phone rang constantly with attorneys offering to take my case pro bono, sensing the kind of settlement numbers that make law firms salivate. Everyone could smell the lawsuit brewing like storm clouds gathering before a tornado. Constance had declared total war on the wrong engineer. Time to show her what happens when you bring a clipboard to a nuclear fight. The countdown to her destruction was about to begin. Everything changed the day I found the legal nuclear bomb buried in 40-year-old city records. I'd been spending my evenings at the municipal archives, digging through dusty filing cabinets that smelled like old paper and bureaucratic neglect. Most people would have given up after 3 days of squinting at faded photocopies. But 25 years of engineering had taught me that the devil lives in details other people ignore. That's when I found it. A 1987 city ordinance tucked between zoning amendments and water rights disputes. Perpetual access maintenance requirements for agricultural conversion subdivisions.